what is it that you represent? What percentage of screen producers in Australia do you represent?
I'd reckon, depends on your, I have to be careful here, what sort of producer. I think it's fair to say that we represent perhaps the more capitalised end of the street. Certainly we've got the Southern Stars, you know, the Beyonds, the Fremantles, the Crawfords, the Granadas. But we've also got, you know, the Jigsaws with Nick Murray's company, Freehand, and a whole number of companies, and that's in television. In film, you know, Porchlight, you know, Jan Chapman, that sort of people. We would represent about 95% of producers in TV, I would think. We would represent around about 80% in film. We have some people who, you know, significant filmmakers who are not members for their own reasons, and we respect that. They think we've perhaps got too much of a commercial edge to what we do, and you know, we respect that. Documentary, it's fair to say that, once again, we do the bigger documentary makers, the series producers are more likely to be SPA members than not, so but we have all of those that are on that top end. Television commercials, we've got most of the production companies for that. Animation and new media, we've got, in animation, we've got all the companies to that. Plus, we've got a whole host of members in post-production and in those service industries that support us. So I think that generally reflects what I said earlier. It is a chamber of commerce. And we're looking for businesses, not one-out, you know, hobby producers. We're actually out there to attract those who are serious about the business of producing. And I think we genuinely represent that.
What about networks? Are they regarded as producers if they produce programming?
That's a vexed question, Andrew. We come together on occasions when there's mutual interest, and that won't surprise you. You know, Channel 7, of course, produces Home and Away and All Saints, and we have issues with the unions from time to time where you know, we will consult and try and make sure that we're not getting out of step with each other. And that's allowed under industrial law. It's not allowed under trade practice law, but you can do it under industrial law. At the same time, we're, of course, very much opposed to the idea of in-house production in the networks because, you know, it is, for every Home and Away and All Saints, you're talking about the equivalent of a major Australian production company not being there. And we think it's in the longer-term interests of, you know, Australia as a broadcasting and content provider to make sure we have adequate, you know, content providers arm's length from broadcasters.
So broadcasters should broadcast, producers should produce.
And that was the original model.
Yeah, yeah.
And if you recall, that was the model that the states had before the FCC changed the rules, which has led to the current problem they've got. So, yeah, look, we are recognised by government as being the body that represents, you know, the business end of the scale.
Yeah. And what is your relationship with the other, with the craft unions and with the state agencies and government agencies?
With the craft associations, ASDA and the Australian Writers Guild, we have a very respectful relationship. We work in very closely with both organisations on documentary, for instance. There's SPA and ASDA work together on documentary issues through a joint council, on things to do with television, which is more a writers-producer relationship. The Australian Writers Guild and SPA work very closely hand in hand on issues connected with television. You know, more recently, example of animation and writing in animation, and the two organisations have got together to jointly do that on the craft level. Both those organisations from time to time share our concerns about the relationship with the commercial broadcasters and the public broadcasters and come together with us. The union is a much more sort of, you know, structured tension, if that makes sense. I mean, the grammar's wrong, but because of the way historically industrial relations have been conducted in this country, you know, you have employers and you have union, you bash each other up and from time to time. But I think the way we've managed that relationship, particularly over the last 10 years, has led to less attention than ever before in the industry. I think we've only lost one day in TV production in 15 years, nearly 15 years I've been at SPA. So that reflects on a lot of hard work. That means a lot of hard work by producers and actors and crew to ensure that we don't see downtime in the industry, that we get our deals right. But it's a bit schizoid because one day we could be talking to the union, battling, over conditions for actors. The next day we could be on the phone saying, hey, look, we're doing something on content regulation. What can we do together? And we work amicably at that level. So, with the state agencies, it's us helping the state agencies in particular to get the focus right with development and investment in each of those locales. SPA is structured federally. It is a federal organisation with divisions for feature film, television, etc., etc. But in each of the states we have a chapter where all of those divisions come together under a local state banner. It is the broad church of SPA. And their job is to look at issues impacting on them locally through their relationship with the state government. And our chapters have been very effective working with the local agencies to get things right from a producer perspective and more broadly an industry perspective. The work done by the Victorian chapter of SPA, eventually led to the review back in 2000 of the Victorian industry, which led to all sorts of fantastic outcomes. More recently, here in New South Wales, SPA chapters formed a committee to work with the Emma government on new incentives for the industry in Sydney, which are domestically focused, not about Fox Studios. Queensland chapter did the same thing there locally, and the WA chapter has been very active. So we work hand in glove with those agencies to make sure the policy settings are right for them. For me, it's difficult because they're all competing with each other, so I try and sort of stand back a bit and say, look, it's your job locally to do. But we provide each of those chapters with the physical resources to be able to do it. So state agencies, and when it comes to things like SPA Conference and SPA Fringe and DigiSPA, they recognise the value and worth of what we do. They all come on board and see. Part of what we do in those conferences, of course, is development. It is professional development, and most of those agencies are briefed to be involved heavily in that area.